And now, the long awaited, anticipated video we have, an unboxing. It's technically an unbagging of some comic books we recently acquired from a company called Cyberspace Comics off of eBay. And what led us to be inspired by that was a lifetime of enjoying the art of comic books. And recently, here in the city of Fort Collins, I was exploring around and I found, just walking through the city, the heart of the city, Haley's Comics. And it's a store, it's a magical store. I'm half tempted to write a story about that store because it's almost like you go into the store, you've been looking for these comics for many years, and you find them there for 25 cents above list. That was a really magical experience, in perfect condition. They were beautiful comics. In the comics I was interested in, many times it's amazing those of comics even got made. You know, creators had clout at Vertigo and they were able to achieve these amazing creations. And it's not just Vertigo comics I'm celebrating today. It's all types of comics, independent comics, Marvel comics. I grew up collecting a variety of them. So I wanted
So many.
to introduce my favorites, new and old, and see some of the ones that we recently acquired at Haley's, see some of the ones I've held on to for years, inspired as a child to try them. And so I figure, you know, we can start with Marvel. And a lot of these Marvel comics I've had for many, many years.
I wanted to add that I am just getting familiarized with a lot of these comics, and I have noticed that it's helping me to become more creative and to inspire me to do more writing and I love to, like, even like when I'm writing, to like think of it as like, well, if this was a comic, what would that look like? And that helps me to visualize, like, how to go about, like, with brainstorming and plotting and all that stuff. And so it's been very exciting to read all this stuff and just get ideas inspired by the stuff that I'm looking at, and of course not do exactly what they're doing, but do my own thing. And I hope to make my own comic eventually. And I have an idea in the works for that, but we'll see
That's
where
one
it
of the
goes.
most amazing thing about comic books,
Mhm.
is because she is working on some interesting illustrations, and she's an incredible writer. She's an incredible illustrator. She puts such soul into the faces and the eyes, and two little dots can have a soul when she puts them in the right places. And the thing of it is,
He flatters me.
with comic books we always purchased, since I was a child, and these ones who say, well, why purchase comic books at this late date if you don't have them already? And just the same as Sarah was saying, as a creator, we seek inspiration from all sources, but especially from sources that kind of pull on the ley lines of inspiration, you know,
Yeah.
culturally we have. And there's just something about this layout that inspires, this comic book layout. And so all the comics we bought to inspire ourselves.
Like
And as the late great, um, well, yes, as the late great Stan Lee said, when we write, we should write first to entertain ourselves, because we really can't know into the
True.
mind of another. But what we can do is, when we entertain ourselves and we write to please ourselves, then surely there's enough people like us. We find an audience for our works.
Yeah, and your passion comes out,
Your
because
passion comes out.
if you're
Yeah.
not enjoying what you're writing,
That's
then
right. You have
how
to
is
be
it gonna
enjoying what you're
work?
writing. You have to. And the other thing he said that inspired me, that Stanley, was that if you have a product that you're making, a service, a story you're telling, and you go, my golly, I want that. I want to buy it now. Then you know you have something worthwhile.
Mhm.
And so, speaking of which, we'll start off with the saucy Deadpool, the Merc with a mouth, and
I'm not
these
even
comics.
familiar with that
We
one.
got the number ones here. It's a sensational one. Ryan Reynolds did that movie. It was a lovely movie.
Ooh, Spider-Man.
Spider-Man. I collected Spider-Man
Ooh,
throughout the years, and we have some issues here, and it ties into my fascination with Green Goblin. And
Beautiful looking.
in the
Beautiful.
unbagging, we have.
These are in pristine condition.
They are in incredible condition, and I was a very careful child. I did read each of them. So I was saying to Sarah, as I was looking through Sam and Twitch, I'm like, this is a 9.6. As I'm touching it, it becomes a 9.4. And at a certain point, it's about the stories first.
Well,
but
you're
there's
going to want to
certain
touch it,
issues. Well, yeah, the run your hands
They're
over.
meant to be touched.
Well, that's the thing. Is one of the things that inspired a late fascination and a revival in comic books recently. And many comic book salesmen are not a fan of this, and they consider it the evil empire and it tantamount to destroying their industry or damaging it. It was Comixology, and specifically Comixology Unlimited,
which is great.
Which is a phenomenal resource for people that are,
So
wholesome Boy Scouts that don't want to go and pirate comics to try them.
I'm overwhelmed.
The culture of going into a comic book store and it's like, this isn't a library. You can't read this in here. And how do you know unless you're already committed to a run? How do you know to try new comics unless you open them and read them?
Yeah, it's very frustrating, especially with me. Like I'm not familiar with this stuff. It's like if I look at it, it's like the inside is so different from the outside. I'm like, what did I just buy?
It's kind of funny because there's an issue of Madame Xanadu, and it's like, we'll talk about more about DC and Madame Xanadu. And that issue, it's like she's supposed to be a 30-something fortune teller woman. I'm all ready for that bold woman of power to embark upon this lavish story, and you open it up and it's an entirely different story.
She helped a little kid,
and you know
she was
what?
A witch. She was a good witch.
She proves that if you had subscribed to Madame Xanadu and you're like, oh, Madame Xanadu this month, let me open it up. And it turns out to be this story that's wholly unrelated from the broader story.
You think.
It's a little vignette.
No, you think. And then she shows up.
So you can see that it was satisfying for the people that got a curveball in the mail. But it's always funny with that. And here I'll show some anomalies, some weird issues I've collected as well. Before that, I'll go into Green Goblin. I was excited. Well, the thing about Marvel and Green Goblin, and I was inspired by that, was that they took the time to make a comic book about a villain. And a lot of the people in Vertigo were breaking new ground at the time too, and before then. But sometimes you get a comic like this, The Incredible Hulk 300, and it's like, I don't collect the Hulk, but this issue, I said, oh my goodness, it really says it all about the Hulk, doesn't it? And if you investigate these things, and characters,
I'll look at that.
Characters in the go-go 90s when they were investing money into comics like you wouldn't believe.
That one looks like a shiny Pokemon card almost.
It does look like that. Cable and Bishop got their own runs at a time, and I like the future. I like to imagine how the future might be.
The title of that is actually Raised.
Yeah, you know what? Marvel was one for these gimmicks with the hollow foil and everything.
I love that. I'm a sucker for gimmicks.
I like a classic iconography, and covers are worth something. And like the old, I don't have a lot of classic old issues, the Golden Age, the Silver Age, and all that. But occasionally you see something like Doctor Strange fighting with the X-Men, and you just go, man, I'm going to snap it up. And that's like, and sometimes you have a soft spot for, I was a romantic child. So you see, I was collecting the X-Men
So was I.
But certain issues stood out to celebrate a romance. Who doesn't love Gambit and Rogue? And just the classic romances. Who doesn't love Jean Grey and Cyclops, their wedding issue? As a little boy, I was like, oh, I love a good wedding. And you know what? Something to introduce later on when we start talking about Kid Eternity and some of these Vertigo things. There's only really 2 issues of Kid Eternity worth your attention, although the whole thing is free on Comixology. I wouldn't have been brought to my attention without it. These Vertigo comics were intended for an adult audience. And it's like, sometimes I'm like, oh, as a child, I wish I had kids of, Books of Magic, because it's like so amazing.
I really look forward to that.
And as somebody named Timothy, it's kind of cool to see a protagonist named Timothy, and it's surreal as an adult reading these books, and Timothy does this and Timothy does that.
And I was saying, can you imagine if your middle name was Hunter or something? Or
my middle name is Walker.
His middle name is Walker.
It's weird. And it's I've often had these questions, and one of the questions is, if somebody decides to name a character after you, like, you just put up with it. If I was named Timothy Hunter and I wasn't happy with that, I would just, what can I do? I have to put up with it. Anyhow, speaking of which, I don't know if anyone was named Rogue, but there's something in this. He just happened to have. I've been collecting Rogue for years, and I love them.
Is that the same author?
Cyberspace Comics happened to have Rogue #1 for $1.50. And one of the things about Cyberspace Comics on eBay that you guys should know, if you ever want to find a comic that you've never had for years, they have 30,000 comics online. It's incredible. And the prices are very reasonable. And the thing about it is, when you buy in bulk, there's this $5 shipping, except it's spread out over, you can have 40 individual comics sent to you for that $5 shipping. and you get 20% off if you buy more than 9 issues. So that was something that was like, oh my God, I wanted to complete my print runs. I wanted to seek inspiration. If you're looking for inspiration, if you're looking to complete your print runs, then that's a place to be a great hunting ground. And of course, I'm a big fan of buying local. So when I went to Haley's, I cleaned Haley out of his Vertigo. But even almighty Haley didn't have all the Vertigo. And Storm, and he has certain things I didn't need from cyberspace that I need to celebrate. And one of them is that this dude has the complete print run of Storm. So if you don't have Storm, it was a great print run. He has it under Afrocentric. There were very few black superheroes at the time so sensational as Storm. To be honest, I had a crush on Storm when I was a child. And it's like certain ones, Catwoman #1, and we'll see some Catwoman in the batch we brought today. Other one that I thought was adorable, and really one of the things I was like, wow, this is like Laverne and Shirley as a comic book. Patsy Walker's Hellcat. It just seems like Archie almost. It seems like All American, but with a sass to it. And I just love that kind of thing. So, meanwhile, so that's
it's refreshing when they have a superhero that's a different ethnicity.
That's Marvel, but
there's not enough of that.
Then we segue to DC and some of the comics I purchased as a child, and it's like I'm kind of giving you guys a limited glimpse of some of my absolute favorites. So one of the things I loved that DC did as a child was the Elseworlds series, and the Elseworlds series produced some really cool stuff, and I collected Batman as a child.
Mona Lisa.
Yeah, I know, right? This was one of the grooviest issues. You can find this on Cyberspace Comics for like $15. And let me tell you, folks, it's worth every penny. If you're a Leonardo da Vinci fan, there was a comic done by Vertigo Comics called Chiaroscuro. And I'd never seen it before. It lies in wait at Haley's for those who appreciate such things, as does The Adventures of Baron Munchausen. And it's like one of these things where you can't buy them all. You go in, and even if they're $2 an issue, you couldn't possibly buy every comic you were looking for. You couldn't unless you were a madman. And it's Elseworlds, Pirate Batman. Oh my God, as a child, it blew my mind. And then, certain issues of Superman. Yeah, Supes had some good issues in the Golden Age. And some, Clark, that is about as baller as Clark Kent ever looked. And then you have here an Elseworlds Superman, which I thought was incredibly groovy as a child. And then segueing from that to a revival. Yeah, just like the classic Superman issue that's worth a fortune. Supergirl lifting that car in the exact same pose. I thought that was really cool. And, of course, it's always wonderful to celebrate a female superhero. One thing I found at Haley's I'd never heard about. And we'll talk about some of the mysteries of Haley's. And one of the things about it was scrolling through, you'd never heard of something? For a certain price, for $2, you'd give a comic like Slash Maraud a chance if you were an interesting person. Slash Maraud? What were they thinking? Slash Marauder? No, this isn't Slash Marauder. This is Slash Maraud. This is about the punkest comic that DC ever did. And I didn't know what to expect when I opened Slash Maraud #1. I grew up with G.I. Joe comics. And G.I. Joe comics, I mean, of course, you had the Cobra villains, and they were cool, Cobra Commander, all these amazing things. But that was really a clean-cut comic book. And so these same people that worked on, I mean, you couldn't get. And it was a love letter to this classic type of action comic. And I just wanted to show off how unbelievable this specific comic is. And they shot themselves in the foot. There was a point of pride that this comic was going to be obscure and nobody was going to know about it.
So much detail.
And it cost barely anything. It's a riot of color and sensation. The story is a story that's like, they couldn't tell the story with G.I. Joe. It just was too intense. It was too crazy. But it feels like a classic G.I. Joe comic that they were given carte blanche to just go crazy with no rules, no advertisements in Slash Maraud, free your mind. And one of the things is, I don't know how they got away with making this obscure comic and sparing no expense. And if at the time, they were skimping. They were skimping on comic books at this time, DC. So that they made this, and they spared no expense to dump ink on these pages that they weren't going to market. It's one of the biggest mysteries. But everyone should go and get their 6-part miniseries of Slash Maraud. And that's another thing you can find on Cyberspace Comics. And I tried to be decent. And I could have got the other 2 issues that were there, the number 1 and number 3. But I needed to complete my print run because this is so unbelievable. So Cyberspace Comics helped me out for $1.50 an issue, if you can believe it.
Amazing.
And just Slash Maraud is such an incredible comic book. And it was like, I wouldn't even known about this comic book that it existed. Because look, they shot themselves in the foot. Not only did they give it a weird name that's hard to understand why they would even do it, but they didn't even do a full cover. They did these marquees around the edge. And actually,
like that.
it kind of has a retro grace to it. And it's like, what sells comics? The covers do. And we'll talk more about that with Kid Eternity and some of the covers on Kid Eternity.
I wish that wasn't the case.
The cover alone on Kid Eternity, even if you find it's the diary of Grant Morrison, the madman, who it's amazing there were even comics to be read because the drugs were just like, and he writes about. And one of the things they did with Vertigo, and this was almost early punk rock Vertigo, in that they were just allowed to do whatever they wanted with these comics. And just look at that funky babe with the gas mask. I mean, it's not even Kish. Look at the spiked bats. I mean, just this is about
makes you think of a 70s film.
This is exactly like Easy Rider,
animation.
like the Warriors. This is the Warriors, the comic book. If they spared no expense on every page of painting, the best ink, the best paper, they almost fetishized it. And of course, they knew all throughout the DC library what ink was available, what paper was available. And so they we want it to be like a flashback to a comic 20 years ago if they had the technology of today. And the technology of the 90s was all inspiring, as we can see. And so going back to that, the first
90s.
time I went, because it was like, you know what? The stuff coming out of independent publishers these days is incredible and awe-inspiring, and it's like catnip. And certain publishers like Oni Press, we can have a digression here.
I love Oni.
Yeah, almost all of Oni's new
chose
spreads. She chose this out of a wall full of new comics. And I'm like, I like when I go into comic book stores to buy old comics. And why? Because one of the secrets that most customers don't know.
It's they're better.
Yeah, and Haley had the
classic.
decency to have Vertigo available to his audience. And when it didn't sell, when it came out, it became his to sell. And he sold it for that price. It was a very affordable price. He didn't have to make a fortune off of it because he got the comics, on consignment, and he got to keep them when they didn't sell. And that is something that rewards comic book stores and other distributor networks. When your comics don't sell, you can rely on somebody coming down the line. And it's like, that's where Comixology comes into play. Because without Comixology, I wouldn't have known to love Black Orchid and Books of Magic and Kid Eternity that weren't put in front of me as a child, because I was a child. They didn't put the Vertigo in front of me.
You can look at the comic on Comixology first if you get unlimited, especially.
That's right. Yeah.
And then you can look at them for free before you go and buy the actual comic.
That's right.
And so you know what you're getting.
It's kind of really neat. And
it's like,
one of the things that I came into, the first time I went into Haley's, I had a history of buying comics at this store called Comics Plus. And in Mount Kisco, and my mom went to M&R Deli in Mount Kisco. Yeah, show the art. It's incredible art.
Pardon me for a second.
No, by all means. Yeah, it was so inspirational. And so I went to Comics Plus as a child, and that's where I got most of my original comics. I went to Third Universe a little bit in Yorktown, but not much. And but that was my store, Comics Plus. And certain ones they just didn't have. They weren't a Vertigo shop. They didn't have certain things. But one of the things they did have when I was a child was the Question. And so I have a little bit of the early Question, and I loved it. I loved that when I was a child. The agrarians, and it's a little wordy. There's inside jokes if you're a nerd. It's an insider's comic. It was printed to gratify those who could afford to print such things and to think such questions. And I just went into Haley's and I said, "Do you have the Question?" And it was funny. It's almost like a secret code word, and it's like the door opens up. There's a trap door. Yeah, we have the Question.
You're asking a question about the Question.
Yeah, exactly. And for $2 an issue, and I'm like, oh man, I'll get the ones they have. And the ones they didn't have, inexplicably enough, it was like this weird thing with Cyberspace and Haley's, where what Haley's didn't have, Cyberspace did. So happy to go through some of the Question I got there.
He has a knack for finding things.
Marvel. The most unusual thing I've ever seen Marvel produce was a comic called STARSTRUCK. And I wouldn't have known about that comic if it wasn't for Haley's. And Marvel really wasn't known for giving unusual things like Starstruck that weren't so. It was so unlike everything else Marvel did.
It's a beautiful cover.
It's a beautiful cover. It's not like the regular art, and it's not like it's frenetic. It's
very manic color.
But I recommend Starstruck because it's an expression that
it's different.
It's different. It's different, and Marvel gave it a chance. And full color prints, and again with the paper and the ink, they really. And where's the ads? These people, they had obscure comics, and it's, you know what? Here's the thing about ads in comic books. Because I feel as if, when I was a child, he was like, when he brings you out of the magic a bit. When you're an adult, you look at these ads from the 90s, and you're like, Jurassic Park sculpture, what is this?
Really
video
nostalgic.
Games, other comic books, Scud the Disposable Assassin.
X-Files website.
You never know when you're going to see X-Files, exactly. It's like a blast from the past every page, even if it's not the comic book. And so
you could actually look at the X-Files themselves, like the files.
And talking more about independent comics, and that Impossible Beasts one that Sarah picked out was like off the chain to an unbelievable degree. And she just there were 60 comics. Of course, Haley's Comics is like a temple of comic books. And there's nothing in that store except for comic books. It's chock-a-block with comic books. 30 years of comic books. It's insane.
The whole like tables.
And he doesn't really charge inflated rates. It's like he's and he's giving back to the community when he provides these inspirational stories to people at discount rates. And
you can barely take out
speaking of amazing finds. Yeah,
things. You barely take some of the comics out. It's so packed.
The trick is with Haley's is I'm going to give away the secrets to mining Haley's for its goodies. In any good comic book store, okay? They miscellaneous section, okay? Number 2, they pack the comics in so tight you can't thumb through and not injure them. Like it would be impossible. So you have to take some of the comics out so you can thumb through them and dig properly. And unbelievably enough, Haley had a Prometheus section, and I was like, geeking out over Prometheus for years.
He has like endless amounts of good stuff there.
This issue alone, bought for a quarter above list. The issue itself is not the best issue of Promethea. You can get issues 1 through 6 of Promethea on Comixology Unlimited, so you can blow your mind digitally. And this issue, but just look at this issue, and it just looks like the iconography of the golden age of comic books. And just this image will inspire you. Just the covers are worth $2. And just this issue I got for $3.25, and on Cyberspace Comics, it is listed for $25. It's Promethea 25. And the cover looks unbelievable, right?
I'm excited about those.
This issue is worth $25. It is. It's worth every penny. And the interior of it, the amount of effort they put into Promethea, Alan Moore is obviously like, what a career comics. And this was him allowing himself to freedom. And the structure, and this one I got on Cyberspace Comics for $1.50. And it's the 3rd issue of Promethea. And each issue of Promethea they suffered over. And the actual layouts of these issues, I'll open it up so you can see how mind-blowing the layouts are. And they're unlike many other comics. They're just Art Nouveau masterpieces.
Beautiful.
And just drawing from the inspiration of nature and all cultures to make something that almost looks like 20,000 Leagues Under the Sea. And each of these issues is themed. And so I heartily recommend people to pick out Promethea to inspire themselves. And just not a bad issue in the bunch of Promethea. So moving on to Vertigo. Well, Vertigo, DC. So we have here Black Orchid and Kid Eternity. And I'll show you some issues that I think are standout issues. Kid Eternity, its initial run had 3 different launches, and it was a revival of a comic that they put out in the early days of DC. And that comic didn't really do too hot. It didn't find a ton of fans. But what it allowed them to do is offer Grant Morrison an opportunity to revive such things. So issue number 1 is really groovy. And one thing you might not notice if you look at the digital is they used a very soft tone gold foil. And it was a nice classy touch for sure. And it's, you know what, Kid Eternity is a bit of a perplexing one because basically it's a fever dream. It's a diary of a madman. So most of the time, the covers though, this issue 5 was incredible. And why was issue 5 especially incredible? And they did this intentionally. And it almost reminded me of Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, and how that was originally Metazoic Age, and then they rebranded it to Cadillacs and Dinosaurs. And I always thought it was amusing that Cadillacs and the logo was behind dinosaurs. So you're kind of like, oh well, it's Cadillacs and Dinosaurs, but but the one of the things that really pops about issue 5 of Kid Eternity is the drawings of these classic cars. And whether that was an intentional thing to advertise these classic cars and to increase the prestige of them in the minds of those who are young and impressionable, I couldn't tell you. But what I could tell you is it made for a cracking good issue. And they put a little bit more love into this issue than the others. So I encourage people to check out issue 5, but not just issue 5, but issue 13, lucky number issue 13 of Kid Eternity. Because why is this issue especially cool? And why is it the story of Kid Eternity? The more you focus on it, the more it might make you have nightmares. But the more you focus on what's inspirational about these issues, this one has a wedding, and of course, for some reason, there's something about issues that have these ceremonies in them. There's a little bit more love that's put into them, I think, because as a mature individual who is making stories happen, you try to find the love no matter what, and you put love into your work. And so those are groovy, and you can find the early Kid Eternity as well. And it was very kind of Cyberspace to sell me this issue for $1.50, because originally they were looking for $5.99 for these first 3 of Kid Eternity, and they spared no expense on these. Wow. And it shows like full color, every page a painting.
Wow.
And we'll talk a little bit more about.
The cover's so thick.
Yeah, everything is. Well, they wanted $6 for this issue, and it was really like, and it was beefier than an annual, and you could argue that the best style that Kid Eternity had was in these first 3 issues that were like premium issues to reintroduce to do a revival of that character. And speaking of revivals of characters, we going back to Haley's, Madame Xanadu was in the mix, and I loved Madame Xanadu for a long time.
I can understand why. I just looked at it today.
And the iconography of the covers alone, and but the actual, once you get into the issue, and you look through and you see like these amazing interiors they drew, and they, show them. And we could be here all night looking through these amazing things. Wow, there's some groovy stuff. And just like, I'm trying to find one where she has an interior of her boudoir, because I thought that's a great action shot. I mean, they had real action in these Madame Xanadu comics, like real action, and just they really cared, and I think they did a great job. And I feel as if it was marketed a bit better, she could be the new Wonder Woman. But it's like
that'd be cool.
More and more people are interested in these mature heroes, these mature female heroes, and it's kind of cool. The Dreaming is just showing Sarah. There's some handful of issues of The Dreaming that are really good, and that's the beauty of comic books is it's serial, it's chapter like nature, and that you can kind of pick and choose. You can kind of go, these things inspire me more than others.
The first one that I found and I actually wanted to claim was a copy of one of the Dreaming issues, and because it was so poetic and so beautifully drawn, and it felt like a movie, like you were watching a movie, and it's just like it was very cinematic. It had a very cinematic feeling to it.
That is almost the best issue of Dreaming, the one that Sarah chose for herself. It's called The Secret Language of Flowers. I have it out someplace.
That's okay.
Yeah, it'll come up, I'm sure. But that issue is incredible. Speaking of incredible issues and interesting turns for a company like DC and an offshoot of DC like Vertigo to make, is they had incredible things that they wouldn't make. If you say today, maybe they would, but not to what they really invested in Black Orchid. And again, they were so proud of this new imprint of Vertigo, and that they had a female hero that it almost looks like the Scream a bit, But they, again, if you went to a print house and said, we want to do for our first issue a partial, like subdued, almost semi-matte, like lavender foil, they'd just laugh because the expense of doing so would be onerous.
show
Onerous.
the
Well,
orchid?
This is a fun time to show the orchid, I suppose. We have a little orchid, and his name is Lorca.
It's not
And
that
if you want to
little.
go and get them so we can show them off, that's
Okay.
cool. And I'll show off the Black Orchid Book 1, the annual they did. And again, how thoughtful of cyberspace that they sold this incredible comic. It doesn't look as if it even been read. For $1.50, it was really, really generous of them. And this one specifically almost feels like, I don't remember, if you remember Max Payne playing that, Remedy and some of these other, and just the amount of effort they put into the visual storytelling. And it's this specific book 1 issue is very low on dialogue, but then the actual stunning, like, it's incredible. Look at that. And here we are with our Lorca. So we have our Black Orchid.
Yep.
And we have our Black Orchid. And you can see how beautiful this orchid is. His name is Lorca, after that Coil song, Lorca, not Orca.
Mm-hmm.
And you can see it's like the exact same shade. It's really cool. And I picked him out at Trader Joe's. It was really nice that he was there to pick up. And just going through some of the issues of Black Orchid, I wanted to show you what I found at Haley's for $2.25 an issue. And just the covers alone, I just think, and at the time when these Black Orchid comics came out, they were mocked. And people, Philistines would come into comic book stores and go, is that a computer glitch? But this was like, cutting edge. And they used incredible technology in the 90s to create these covers. And Dave McKean was often behind them. And Dave McKean has a style that is just, it's mind-blowing. And the cover sold the books in many cases. Black Orchid was an unusual hero. Sherilyn was a bit of a weirdo. And she reminded me of Rachel from Friends, this Sherilyn from Black Orchid. And Black Orchid herself, she's a bit of a dastardly woman almost. She's almost like, again, breaking ground as, having a villain for a hero in a comic book or an anti-hero. That wasn't something that was too common, especially not like a female anti-hero or somebody that went their own way, regardless of what others thought of them. But I think it's a really great message to send. And lastly, we have here some comics that are near and dear to my heart. And the most dear of them to me is the Sam and Twitch. And I grew up loving Sam and Twitch as a child. And I just, I was reading Spawn a lot as a child, and I have actually one of the things I'm looking to do is I've got a print run of Spawn. This is issues 5 through 75. And I thought, what a price to sell it for would be $777. So it's like, and I love those comics. They're available digitally, but they're in absolutely perfect condition. And I'm like, you know what? They're worth more than that. But what a groovy thing is Spawn 5 through 75 for $777. Redeem them. And for $10 a comic, ain't bad price. So that's a price. That's a selling price, really. But going back to Sam and Twitch and like Curse of the Spawn and they did all these print runs that were Spawn the Dark Ages, Spawn the Impaler, Spawn the Undead, and the covers. I'm showing them quickly. The covers were incredible. They spared no expense. Every page of painting, it's very impressive. And dumping black onto the page, dumping rich colors, magical colors onto the page. The pages themselves are wonderful. And the art is incredible. The storytelling is incredible. And a lot of these classic Spawn comics remind me a bit of another thing I was able to snap up on cyberspace. And I got a little bit of it on at Haley's. And then the issues he didn't have, the three print run of Destiny, A Tale of Deaths Untold. And in the same way, it just... And another classic comic book we're going to see the first issue of when we start unbagging these comics. It's incredible that we haven't even moved on to the unbagging of what we got from cyberspace really yet, except for a handful, that first batch he sent me. And look at that. It's just, the only thing better than that is like Kingdom Come.
Closer.
If you've ever read DC's print run, it was a 3-issue print run of a thing called Kingdom Come. but this almost feels like a medieval version of that. And it's like it's hard to beat Superman and Batman hand painted like old tapestries. It's hard to beat that, and that's why Kingdom Come was so incredible, and that's why I loved it so much as a child. But so now to get into, after all that, and Promethea is worth your attention, and digitally especially. But we kind of pre-opened these a bit because I'm like, I don't want to fumble on camera with some cutting instrument or look like a bumbling clod or anything, even though I'm going to regardless. So I wanted to show off.
No, you don't.
Well, regardless. So here comes some weird ones and good ones, and I can't believe the price sometimes because they were almost exclusively all. So cool. Yeah, they were all cool, and it took hours, and it was kind of a fun game because I was looking for specific comics to complete my print run of the Books of Magic and Black Orchid, because there were like literally 4 issues that Haley didn't have. So I was like looking for those. I stumbled upon Cyberspace Comics.
That's how amazing Haley's is.
Yeah, Haley's is really, it's miracle. And
ooh.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
whoa,
every
hold this
issue is good. That's why. Books of Magic is hit or miss, and it had too long of a print run, frankly. And the first books, whoever got those first 4 Books of Magic books in 1991 when they were printed.
Oh wow!
They have nothing to do almost. The covers have nothing to do with Timothy Hunter, this little bespectacled boy, scrawny boy. But for some reason, but those are digitally available on Comixology Unlimited. Yeah. And certain comics, I was like, I always wanted to have this when I was a child. Ghost Zero. Just the name. Ghost Zero. I have another one here.
That looks amazing.
Mystique 7. Oh, yeah. Ghost is an incredible comic. And some of these issues, they're all untouched almost. They're all insanely good condition.
Insane.
And it's like, I didn't buy them to flip them and resell them. I bought them. I mean, Books of Magic
you have such good taste.
Well, what I wanted to do was, with Books of Magic especially, was I happened to get, I mean, some of these issues of The Dreaming are just, and you never really know if an issue of The Dreaming is going to be good unless you just try it. And Weird Tales number 1. Oh my God. Yeah, this one here, I just thought the iconography of the issue, but then and this is independent comics, and they really cared, and they invested in their art.
Oh, it looks great.
Yielded a dividend, assuredly. And yeah, look at that.
Wild.
And you know what's fun is seeing something for the first time on camera, and King Tut's Pharaoh's Mask and all this crazy stuff. And it reminds me of a video I did that's a secret video that's currently unlisted, and only the most hardcore Lovecraft fans knew. I read Harry Houdini's Under the Pyramids for an hour on my balcony around Halloween time last year.
And you did a great job with it.
And I did, but you know what? I wanted to highlight my content, and I wanted to make sure that there's some. I can't.
That was a trip, though.
Yeah, and somehow, even without bags, these issues look untouched.
Oh, more of The Dreaming?
More of The Dreaming. Yeah,
awesome.
The 2 trees. Reminds me of the 2 trees of Valinor, which was something that Ungoliath found and drank the well of Varda.
Tolkien, right?
Tolkien, yes. And I read The Tale of Tinuviel for an hour and 45 minutes.
Amazing.
And I read that in my mother's copy of the Book of Lost Tales.
Go watch it. It's insane.
It's
insanely good.
And from The Tale of Tinuviel was inspired to write my own Tale of Tevildo.
Also insanely good.
That is better almost, because it doesn't go on for an hour and 45 minutes. One thing I'll say of Tolkien, only the grandmasters like Tolkien could hold your fascination for that extended duration. So that I thought was really cool.
True.
And Madame Xanadu, more Books of Magic. I gave an unusual book a chance. This issue's really good. Yeah, you want to check it out? Yeah, show people if you like a page. That's like really cool. You'll be looking at it too. And
I love the cover. I mean, just look at like how they drew the like.
Yeah, they nailed it.
Everything.
They did.
It's amazing.
That's why they really nailed it. And certain things I gave a chance to I'd never heard of before. Just like at Haley's, I never heard of this Rasputin comic.
Wow, this looks beautiful. Look at that.
But I'm fascinated by Rasputin. There's actually a really good book that came out not too long ago, because the Soviet archives were were declassified. Wow, it's a really good issue too. And I had never seen this before, but until you actually.
Wow.
Oh yeah, show them. How cool is this? Wow, that is amazing. Holy moly. That's the kind of thing you buy Madame Xanadu
That's
for.
the kind of stuff that like
unbelievable true magic.
I'd have that on my wall as a poster.
Yeah, there's quite a few things that are in this bag that you would put on the wall as a
It's so beautiful.
I'd looked into this.
Cry.
Yeah, it almost brings you to tears how beautiful this art is. That's why. And unbelievable stuff.
Look at the shading in that you can see the light on her. I don't know if you can see it on here, but you can see the light on her face over here. It's the shadowing, and it's just like.
And look at Rasputin drinking the wine. How groovy is that? And you know what? I might look into more of Rasputin, but I think that, you know what? I wanted to talk about number ones. And the number one issue or something.
And then you get ads that sometimes are like, that makes me want to read that. It says air. It's backwards on the video for some reason. I don't know why they do that. I guess it's because of the camera for the laptop.
More Madame Xanadu here. Well, I'll put them aside here. Sam and Twitch. Now, Sam and Twitch had a run called Sam and Twitch Case Files. And I was so excited when I heard that they were going to do a Sam and Twitch movie, because I always loved Sam and Twitch when I was a child, as I said before. And both of them are interesting. Twitch almost looks like Kurt Vonnegut. Sam's just this big fat slob that just loves eating pizza and grinders and burgers and drooling them all over his shirt. It's always hilarious. And it's a grotesque. And I always think to myself, if you can sell a grotesque, anyone can sell a bikini girl. Not everyone can sell these weirdos. And it's almost like a classic with Sam and Twitch. It's almost like classic Laurel and Hardy. That's the other one you could think of.
I thought the weirdos sold themselves.
The weirdos, it's hard for a weirdo to sell themselves. It really is. And
but they stand out because they're weird.
We'll talk about weirdos that sell themselves. Question number 20, perhaps the most beautiful issue of the question.
Takes one to know one.
There's a clown on the cover. There is. But there's also an amazing faceless superhero that always inspired me as a child. And speaking of things that... What?
That cover is amazing.
Yeah, this is actually
I remember
part
seeing
4.
that when you were looking through stuff.
Yeah, well, this is what I was talking about. Shop local when you can. Like, I picked up some of Books of Magic, Slave of Heaven's Arc. And the Slave of Heaven's Arc, I picked up half of it at Haley's.
Hold it a little closer because you can see the line on it.
Oh, it's gorgeous. And these are almost like annuals. And it's one of the better story arcs they did in the Books of Magic. And there are some I just didn't even approach. Because that's the nice thing about comic books. You can pick and choose which stories you want to be fascinated by.
It honestly feels like Christmas to me with all this stuff.
Yeah, it's totally
I'm
like
like, this is all brand new to me.
Yeah.
Even just like, just
in
general.
These were almost all $1.50 an issue. And go and pick yourself up your dreams. These were my dreams as a child.
The only comics I ever read were in Disney Adventures magazine when I was little.
Yeah.
And the first one that I ever really connected with was a Tailspin.
This one was incredible. Wow.
A Tailspin comic.
Look at that cover.
It involves Shabala.
Death and Harry Potter all in the same issue. And you just know from that cover that issue is going to be...
If you can get your hands on any Disney Adventures magazine...
Do they look like they've been touched once?
If you can get your hands on any Disney Adventure magazines, they have comics for the Disney Adventures like the really old classic DuckTales, old classic, I think, Chip and Dale Rescue Rangers, old classic
The
Tailspin.
Dreaming. Dave McKean did these covers, my God. Go ahead and talk about it.
The one that I connected with and love is... it involved them working with Don Carnage, who is their enemy. And I won't say anything else other than that, but it was one of the best, stories that I remember enjoying as a kid. And it was a comic. So it's like, and it was my favorite Disney Adventure magazine, and I collected them religiously. So, yeah.
The Dreaming had such an incredible print run. And not only were they great issues.
Wow, let me see this.
The covers alone are worth $1.50, let alone.
Wow, it makes you think of James and the Giant Peach, but I think that's an apple.
It's a golden apple. It's the classic golden apple from the fables of the age. And this is, remember what I was talking about with Catwoman?
Wow.
Yeah. This issue for $1.50 in this condition is unbelieves. And let me tell you,
that looks incredible.
It's like Laverne and Shirley the comic. It's incredible.
See these ads, Ace Ventura. Where are you going to see that ad?
Exactly. It's a blast.
I mean, I'm sorry that it shows up backwards with the writing,
It's
but
intrusive, the
it says
advertising.
it's a jungle out there.
And sometimes it's not good.
It's a jungle out
But
there.
if you remember the things that are being advertised, and this is a new issue, this Patsy War. I mean, it's been probably half a decade before this
disorder
came
and
out.
confusion everywhere.
Okay, let's see here. So that is even just one bag of it. So let's move on to the second bag, and hopefully we'll find what I ordered in here.
Look at this.
Hopefully we'll find our other issues of Slash Maraud so I can show these off, because I totally want to promote Slash Maraud, because not because I have any agenda, because they're dirt cheap. Nobody really wants them. And the only reason nobody wants them is because they weren't marketed. And that's one of the dark secrets of comic books is some things were marketed, and because of that, the prices are ginormous. And sometimes it's generational. And sometimes you have a
put this one put this one aside.
Sometimes it's like the past generations that go gaga and pay $25,000 for a comic. Sometimes they can't appreciate something that didn't come out in their generation.
Oh wow!
Yeah, I know. Like, okay, so perfect example.
These are so beautiful. It makes you want to cry.
Yeah, this is the best issue of Green Arrow ever, and I know it because I read it already.
I've never even seen this stuff.
But it's nice to have it in perfect condition.
This is the first time I've ever seen this in my entire
Quibblers
life.
will say, well, if it's not 9.4, then it's not at least that. Then you can't say that. I mean, honestly, I wouldn't. I have some issues that are like 9.6, 9.8. I wouldn't want to touch them. And what's the point of that? And it's like if somebody wants that super untouched, I question them. It's about the stories. And that might only look at the iconography of that Catwoman #5. And,
but its purpose is to be read and enjoyed.
That's right. And so that might actually
really
be
not doing any damage to it.
There's a market that was an old market. And in the 90s, a lot of people bought comic books as an investment. And they bought them because they thought, well, these are going to accrue in value. And here's another one that they invested in comics to this insane degree.
How beautiful is that?
Yeah, I know. It's unbelievable. It's annual #4. Don't... to a certain extent, you don't want to touch it as much as you can. But the thing of it is, because that is in perfect condition, this is why. And it's a really good issue, and I know that already. Isn't that groovy? So
I'm trying to get used to
question, certain issues of the question have covers that are grotesque and unpleasant to appear. But that doesn't mean the issue's bad.
Oh, wow.
This was really cool. Yeah, when I saw that, it reminded me of the Page Master with him coming out of the book. And I feel as if Macaulay brought his A game to the Page Master. But, it's not his fault that everything else didn't live up to it. But that almost looks like that. And it just like also Dungeons and Dragons, like the ultimate fantasy of what books are supposed to bring you. They're supposed to transport you to this magical realm. And in this circumstance, more often than not, with Vertigo, they do.
It makes you feel like you're going to an art museum.
This one,
all this stuff.
This one, there you go. A little gnome. And don't let the $3 fool you. I paid $1.50 an issue.
I don't even know where to start. I'm like, so.
And here's a very cool one. One of my favorites, The Question, working with Green Arrow. How could you go wrong with that combo? And, Green Arrow is really basically just a twist on Robin Hood. But when you take a pure tale like that and you transmogrify it in a modern way, it really can become something incredible. And speaking about something incredible, and so I'm not exactly always like a cheapskate, always only after the value. I paid $3 for this issue. It's Slash Maraud #6, and I'm sure it's worth it.
I know what those spiky things are now.
Yeah, exactly. You learn as you read it, and Spawn the Undead, and it's nice to have some issues I was missing as a child for dirt cheap. That's always nice.
Oh, that's one.
Yeah, I know the books of Fairy,
I love
and
fairies.
We're dipping our toe in with this one. It was a 3-part miniseries. I bought issue 2, try it out, see if it's good, and it might be fun to just crack it open on camera and see what is this like, And I know Sarah was excited about this.
I'm
one
very
for sure.
excited about that.
Yeah, I know. I was like showing her, we should get this one, we should get that one, that kind of thing.
I feel like a kid in a candy store.
Yeah, well, that's what it feels like with, and it's almost nice that, it's like adjusting for inflation. If the comic book market had gone how we dreamed it would in the 90s, these comics would be priced out of anyone's range so they could actually get their hands on them and peel through them. And there's a certain you could get everything digitally now. If you're a real scoundrel, you can pirate everything. But the thing of it is, and I support people that don't have money going ahead and pirating whatever they don't have so they can try it. And everyone deserves these issues. but there's only so many of them they printed. And for the people that didn't, and this book of fairy is incredible. And there's another one that I did not dip my toe into, and I regret it. But it's, of course, digitally available on Comixology Unlimited, which is called Witchcraft. And it's a really cool series. And it's really worth your time. And it's dark, for sure. And a lot of the Vertigo stuff is so dark that it almost feels like, if you're not an adult, it's hard to appreciate it.
I noticed that. That's like, it's different with the Oni stuff. The Oni stuff seems more geared towards
the younger that's because they have no incentive to do anything other than sell with Oni, because they don't have the money to do statement pieces like DC did. And these were totally Slash Maraud, and all the Vertigo stuff was them saying, well, these artists are like Alan Moore. You have Alan Moore on staff putting about. He can dip in. Somebody's writing Batman. He can go, what did you do here? And just fiddle with it. And
like
the Grandmaster fiddles with it and makes it perfect, and then moves on to write V for Vendetta. It doesn't need to worry about it anymore.
You sound like your friend Haim.
Yeah, I'm spilling. And he gave me my Asterix comics back in the day. And
Lucky.
Oh my God, did some of these pages
Lucky.
look? Yeah, I know.
I'm envious.
Yeah, I know. Well, I wouldn't have known about it. It was a European thing, aside from Haim introduced me to it. And
I'm not European, and he introduced me to it, and I love it.
Yeah, well, everyone could love it
not,
if they knew it existed, but not everyone knows it exists. And perfect example of this is Slash Maraud. I'm just going to keep showing off Slash Maraud. And a more unsavory person would go, these are $1.50 an issue? Snap them up, corner the market on Slash Maraud and promote it all day long, because it'll sell itself if people knew it existed.
I love a lot of stuff that's not well known.
I'm not the type of person to corner a market. What I do is I show off real value you can snap up for $1.50 an issue.
Which one
is
this?
Slash Maraud. And I'm going to be talking about Slash Maraud because they were showing off. They're like, you know what, man? I could totally, I could get them to promote Slash Maraud like G.I. Joe. But I wrote all this G.I. Joe for them. They didn't even appreciate it, man. I want to make a statement. And that's what they did with Slash Maraud for sure. No doubt.
We're amassing quite a library here.
Yeah, and it's all good. That's why it's especially nice. And it's like, if it does nothing, then stay in our library and inspire us. It did its job and then some. So now on to the final bag, and I received 3 shipments from this cyberspace comics man, who was a noble man and generous man, and he didn't have to go to such trouble to. If you ever want your comics considerately shipped, go to this man, because he went to such extremes just to send me these comics in perfect edition like this for dirt cheap. And if anyone deserves to be promoted, it's him for sure. So it's incredible. So back on to here's one I didn't have when I was a child. I was not at Comics Plus with the week this came out. Curse of the Spawn #5 with my favorite Sam and Twitch. And if you didn't know about this, you should. That they're making. Yeah, I will. Well, I showed them that cover.
Oh, okay.
They're making a Sam and Twitch show now. And one of the coolest things about the Sam and Twitch show, and I cheered when I heard it, was that as cool as Brian Michael Bendis is and as amazing as these stories were, and that's why I love the comics, partially is the stories, they're not going to be doing a reiteration of what they did in the comics. Hooray! Because the fans already read those stories. And if you haven't read those stories and you're first witnessing Sam and Twitch for the first time, the comics will reward you with a new story because they won't be rehashing it in the show. And I wish more things were legitimate new stories that were inspired by the original.
Yeah, exactly.
That weren't just a rehashing of the original. And so that's what I like to promote for sure whenever I can.
I totally agree with you there.
Yeah, and it's like
sometimes nice to see something that you're familiar with displayed in a creative way.
Yeah, exactly.
But it is good to have new content, and with characters that we love and are familiar with.
Well, that's the beauty of a revival like Kid Eternity and Madame Xanadu. Is look at that McKean cover, and you could just look at these McKean covers all day and drool over them, and they have things they did. Where they had a collection of the McKean covers they did, which was really groovy. Here, Green Goblin #2, and I had almost all of Green Goblin, but I did not have Green Goblin #2. I had almost all of it. It's incredible. So it's nice to have that. Here, Wonder Woman
that's
number
cool.
3. I don't have all of Wonder Woman. I don't pretend to. But that issue was especially strong. That's the beauty of comics. You can a la carte choose which ones you find your fancy. Slash Maraud, the rest of Slash Maraud, which would make me cry with delight. Here, wait. Let me just put down the rest of this. And just everyone deserves to get Slash Maraud for free. And just they should be sending people this excess Slash Maraud. Just they should have if you bought G.I. Joe, they should have just sent you Slash Maraud for free. The full print run, because it was only 6 issues.
That lady spiky hair is really
and
cool.
anyone and that wasn't a complete square. I suppose that's the codicil that is in trouble. That loved G.I. Joe would just absolutely. They would have their minds blown. They would have their minds blown by Slash Maraud. Yeah,
New York City.
Yeah, you see. Well, here's the Statue of Liberty. Like, you madmen, you madmen. It is Earth. And look at just and you know what? This is rivaled by very few. That's why. Look at this amazing worm. It's like they went to such incredible. And you know what? I like that they actually allowed the freedom to the artists to actually do something so incredible, go off the rails like this, and make something worth paying attention to. And here's another issue of Slash Maraud number 4. And why am I making my video all about Slash Maraud? Because I love it so much, and it's
You've been showing them all bunch of
Green Arrow, all the classics, and look at this. They're like a hair metal band. They're like a hair metal band. It's incredible, and
I love that lady's blue hair.
Yeah, she reminds me of Storm almost, and it's kind of nice to see. That almost looks like a mutant Morty. Look at that. Look at the mutant Morty. He's got fangs.
Like Rick and Morty.
Okay, yeah, Mutant Morty. Mutant Morty. Okay.
He's not wearing yellow shirt though.
Oh, jeez, I've got fangs, Rick. Shut up, Morty.
He's disturbingly good at
that. Okay, so let's see here. So other things. Here's a comic book series, Seekers Into the Mystery. Okay, that cover is worth $1.50 to me. The rest of the series you can see online. It's available on Comixology Unlimited for free.
Wow.
Yeah, it's actually the best issue of this comic. And there's a little insider's trick that you may not know. And the first 5 issues of comic are usually the best. Because when they're promoting comics, they give them for free sometimes. And they give you the first 5 issues. And they do that so that you continue buying the print run.
Oh, I had that CD.
Oh my God. Yeah, this is gorgeous. Yeah.
Pieces of You by Jewel.
And it's actually a very mature comic. And it's actually secretly about overcoming trauma and how to go through these experiences of remembering and fantasizing and seeking true wisdom. It's actually a genius series. It's deeply underrated. Issue 5 is by far the best.
That was actually the first tape
and
I ever owned.
It's amazing when a cover is so stunning and also the issue is the best issue of it. But issue 5 was like, if you're going to get 1 issue of Seekers, get 5.
Whoa.
I know. Mystique number 7. And almost.
That's amazing.
Yeah, it looks better than it did on the digital file.
It looks like a holographic card.
And it reminds me of what they did with. I wish I didn't bury all this amazing stuff in the bottom of this video, but I hope you guys are sticking out. Mystique number 7. It's like Ghost number 0. It's just a classy.
Ooh, what is this?
Well, just I want to get to the goodies. I don't want to dally over.
Oh, I hear you.
She's a cutie pie, and you can see how amazing this blue lady is in all her glory. They printed it really well, and the colors are vibrant. The form is really. They really went all out with Mystique number 7.
I'm laughing at some of the ads,
and it's funny, yeah. And then Gifts of the Night,
a Clerks 2 ad that looks like its own comic.
Gifts of the Night was a 4-part miniseries they made, and I was searching for it. It was the one thing I couldn't find at Haley's, and everything else he delivered to me as best he could, and it was incredible. And this first issue was so incredible, and they never. I encourage you and I challenge you. This is a challenge. Find in the comments if there's anything that's even close to Gifts of the Night. Please tell us.
Let me see this.
Yeah, well, let me show more of it because I want to show it in sequence, and we'll go on to the next thing. And to a certain point, it's King Lear Insanity, which of course is one of the most haunting stories they were ever told. But
Not for me.
Yeah, it's so dark. That's why.
I love Shakespeare, but
And
that's not for me.
It's dark. It's about this dark king who's paranoid. It's almost like Game of Thrones before Game of Thrones. It's easy to imagine that this is the Mad King Aegon that led to the fall of the Targaryen dynasty, and that's practically what this is. And look at this with the Golden Child who foretold the prophecies, and he's got a little halo around him with an angel hovering over and protecting him. And the thing of it is, this comic specifically, what their intentions were with this would be a great Netflix series. Netflix should pick this up because they don't even need to change the logo. This is it. And they really felt like they could make the Mona Lisa in comic book form back then in the 90s. And they produced magic like that where they spared no expense to make that magic happen. And talking about magic, here's Freddie Mercury himself with his very bushy mustache for $1.50 an issue.
Beautiful cover.
It's a gorgeous cover. You could say he looks
holographic ring.
I've always loved Doctor Strange. And with all the buzz around Doctor Strange and Mr. Cumberbatch, doing all of his stuff, the prices have gone up. And sometimes if you have comics when I was a child, it was hard to complete my print run of Doctor Strange, so I didn't attempt it. But this issue I didn't have. And golly, if it's not full of goodies, now
you do.
It's kind of a nice thing to see a comic for the first time, and it's got Silver Surfer in it. It's got the Hulk in it. It's printed well. It was a celebration issue for them. A milestone issue is usually a good bet for having a good story told well because they care about their legacy, and each of these companies does, and so they tend to put out a good issue for a milestone issue. But that's a little secret. It's the first 5 issues of something. The first issue of something is a safe bet because you can get basically anticipate. There's a cool issue of the question. You can basically anticipate that they're going to pour their whole heart into it and make sure that if there's a chance this succeeds, it will. That's their goal whenever they do that. And talking of if there's a chance this succeeds, it will. I approached this comic book. I purchased it sight unseen because what was he selling it for? The good saint of a man was selling it for 33 cents an issue. Sebastian O. And Grant Morrison wrote it, and the covers are incredible. So for 33 cents an issue, I got the print run of Sebastian O. And it's basically like, and everyone should go out and get their copy of Sebastian O. And why did this not sell? Is because it had a gay protagonist, and the gay protagonist was very inspired by Mr. Wilde. And the thing of it is, the story. One thing I'll say about the story, and one thing that was nice about this was, it's like neo-Victorian. So the dialogue is incredible, and Grant Morrison is a magician because he can write like a hobo, he can write like a cowboy, he can write like a priest, he can write like a Victorian dandy, like Oscar here. And look, and here's the thing about this part I loved because this mansion is full of booby traps made by dead grandmasters that made this house for his ancestors. And the poor police officer is sliding down the slide.
Sounds like DuckTales.
Yeah, it's a little bit like DuckTales. And he reaches the bottom, and his butler comes out. Oh, Soames, hand me my pistol. And he grabs the pistol from a chilled tray that was in the refrigerator, and he's got a chilled pistol in his hand, and he shoots the policeman dead. And where else? I challenge Sarah. Where else have you seen a dandy fop pull out a chilled pistol? His butler pulled out a chilled pistol for him to shoot the police officer with. I thought that was hilarious. And he truly wrote it like a Victorian dandy, and it's almost like neo-Victorian. There's technology in this, and unless you get the mystery play edition of this, there's no backstory that explains all of it. But it's insane, the level of detail. And the stories they told with this were darkly honest in a way that I've never seen a comic so honest. And I just took a blind chance on this, and then I read it on Comixology Unlimited. And I'm
also looking forward to very much.
And it's such an incredible story. and it's so honest. And there's dark secrets in this book, and a dark secret for each of the books that you not find many other places. And frankly, the third issue, there's a secret in this issue that is never heard any other place I've seen. And the other two, you can confirm almost that they're true. And the secret in Sebastian O episode 3, issue 3, yeah, the iconography of this.
I love how they did the train.
The train, everything in this, they suffered. And my goodness, what a book. And it pulled no punches, ruthless, honest. It's about a sociopath villain who's a damn fop assassin and just goes through neo-Victorian England and doesn't get punished in the end. There's no consequences for Sebastiano because he's rich and privileged. So he just does whatever he wants and gets away with it. It's honest. It's the most honest comic book I've ever read. And it's perhaps one of the best. I'd put it in the top 10 of all the comic books I've ever read. Sebastiano. If only all comic books were 3 issues of brilliance and nothing else. An original IP like that is stunning. And talking about that, talking about original IP, Sam and Twitch again. And here we go. Books of Magic again. I thought this issue looked intriguing. Yeah, he's like held aside on a veil of ghosts lifting him up. And Rogue #1. I thought that was a beautiful issue. And a female protagonist like that. And because we demanded it, and I demanded it as a child, I said, I want more Rogue.
That looks
and so they made more Rogue, and how wonderful that they did. And that was a cool one. Issue 51 of Books of Magic, and I got issue 50 at Haley's. And it's funny, issue 50 of Books of Magic is Dudley Dursley's in it. And at that point in the print one, it was 1997, and that was almost exactly when J.K. was launching her Harry Potter. And it's kind of funny because you say, well, Harry Potter's never had a comic book run, but it doesn't really need to, does it? Because Books of Magic exists. And the covers of this. And the covers, they spared no expense, and the interiors, they spared no expense, and that's a rare combo. And
I love Harry Potter, but now I love this too.
And we didn't get very much of the Book of Fairy at all because we kind of tend to dip our toe into it. And to a certain extent, it's kind of fun to do that. Get one issue of something to see if you like it. Or also just here's a digression into the past or the future. And you know what? If you like the Books of Magic, then the Books of Magic number 50 is a phenomenal issue. Ghost #1. I got Ghost #0 and Ghost #1. I thought, and you can look at the Ghost Omnibus on Comixology Unlimited, and it has those issues, and they're stunning issues. Sometimes it's really interesting. These covers are often a fantasy. Swords Against the Question, another Madame Xanadu. Almost has an Oriental vibe to it. You want to look at that?
Oh, sure.
Here, look at this. The Question Burning. The Question Again. And so, yeah, like Sebastian O / Maraud, real finds. And unless you dig, you don't even know about them. And I'm looking forward to seeing what they're going to do with the Sam and Twitch show and see what they do with the new Spawn. And looking forward to the Fort Collins Comic Con coming up. And looking forward to sharing new stories from both me and my wife. She's got new stories coming up. I've got new stories coming up. Got a new original trilogy coming up. It's a sequel to this Arthur Osborne trilogy. If there's more demand for Arthur Osborne stories, there'll be more of them. There's more demand for Push Yami stories. There'll be more of them. But 3 arriving soon. And I'm inspired to get them done while there are leaves on the trees. Because we're reading here in front of the balcony. I want green leaves on these trees for all of Push Yami's stories. And maybe for an Otter Maid, we can have yellow leaves. We'll see, depending on the inspiration. And we'll see all this stuff going forward. Looking forward to sharing more content from this YouTube channel. If you like it, tell your friends. If you like it, go. If you're in the fair city of Fort Collins, you owe it to yourself to go to Haley's and see what they have. They have all of Strontium Dog. They have amazing things at Haley's. Things I found at Haley's I'd never heard of. Scarab. I found Scarab 1 and 5. And to be honest, it's very interesting because it almost is very prescient towards Spawn. And that's about when they were starting to do Image Comics. And it's like, what did they have to compete with Spawn? Scarab. And to be honest, I wouldn't recommend Scarab. It's too dark, and it's too dark when a Spawn fan says, guys, this the obscenity in this comic is a little bit much. It's bad with a Spawn. I'm like, yeah, they're like, well, we're gonna outspawn Spawn. That's what we're gonna do. That's what their intention was, and it was dark. There was dark truths in those books. I wouldn't recommend those specific ones, but the ones that we brought forth before you today, I think we can recommend heartily and inspire you with a myriad of stories and the dialogue and the art together dancing. And oftentimes I wondered, how do these comic book writers, do they storyboard it? And there's several process. And the Marvel process I was especially astonished by. And that's when you have writers and artists that are like this, and maybe they're in the same room together, and they're like, I don't know, you need to redraw this because it needs to look like he's in anguish. And they didn't even have the dialogue written before they drew the art, and then they wrote the dialogue to fit the art in the Marvel way. In the DC way, when they were working, they might have had like a screenplay. And it's like some of these writers were skilled visual artists. They were skilled illustrators. So some of them could bang together a storyboard for the pages and then have the inkers and colorists do the rest and say, oh, wow, like have it like music notes here, have it like an underwater scene here. And like that kind of stuff was more of, later stage comic writing. And it's like some people just painted with words, and they had a synopsis for a page, or they had a paragraph for an issue or something like that. And they could just put together these issues painting with words. And it's just awe-inspiring to see all this. And I hope to share more of our art on our Profit and Prosper YouTube channel. And it's going to take months, but profitandprosper.com is on its way, months away. We're going to put content on there. It's going to be like, yeah, looking forward to it. Hope you'll join us for more. Like and subscribe if you like this. More coming on the way. And if you have any comments, feel free to share, and look forward to sharing more content with you. Yeah. Do you have any final words here before we end this broadcast?
I'm just excited about all this stuff. I'm really looking forward to combing through it and finding my new favorite things.
Yeah, check out these Vertigo comics that are the best of Vertigo. Check out things that find your fancy. Oni Press has, the Impossible Beasts. Oh, Black Knight. I was in Haley's. That was the other one that stood out. 60 new comics. I was haunting me, Black Knight. Kept going, looking at it. It's like verboten. You can't look at the comics. This is a library. You can't look at these comics before you buy them. But this is the thing. The Black Knight is almost like Prince Valiant, sharing with my dear mentor friend Vincent, getting all of Prince Valiant for Vincent because he had I liked it, the funny pages. And, the maintaining of that style throughout the decades with Prince Valiant. It's all inspiring. And to see Black Knight there in that prestige glory, it looks like a comic from like the 1940s and 1950s, but they spared no expense. And you can tell, $4 price tag. That's the thing. And so if you really like comic book stores, I encourage you to go through their dead stock and their stocks in the back and not their new comics, unless you really can't help yourself. If you see a new comic, you go, man, that's what Sarah did. And I said, whoa, that was the best one there. Snap it up.
That's amazing.
It is amazing.
The next one.
Yeah, and all the Oni stuff is incredible. And so many of these independent publishers are, that's why it's good to be like free from prejudice, approach everything with fresh eyes.
It's so inspirational.
And we were so happy to share with you approaching some of these incredible issues with fresh eyes.
Yeah, thanks for being here.
We encourage you to check out these things. Mm-hmm. Get Collegeology Unlimited. Check out what's available for free. There's a ton of content available.
More great stuff to come.
Go to your local bookstores and get their dead stock that inspires you.
Support local businesses.
Exactly. And what your local businesses don't have, go and snap up on Cyberspace Comics on eBay. And I hope you have a good one and have a wonderful evening. And tune in for more. Yes, indeed.